Shalom and welcome to Biblical Faith with Sam Peak. We invite you to join us as Sam brings a study in the Torah from the Jewish sages. And now our speaker, Sam Peak.
Okay. Shalom Aleichem. Very glad to see you, more or less. No, I'm serious. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I said, see, I'm saying just the opposite of what I need to say. That's a bad sign for to learn a little thing. So keep good close watch on me. Make sure I don't get things reversed. Okay. All right. We're studying Pirkei Avot, the chapters of the fathers, the ethics of the fathers, of the sages of Israel. We've been using a commentary actually largely based on the Maharal's commentary on Pirkei Avot and Rabbi Judah of Prague, in a nice book put together by Art Scroll, edited by Rabbi Tuvia Basser. We are in chapter 3 of Pirkei Avot, and we are in Mishnah number 19. We've already discussed a whole lot about the origin of free choice, where it came from. We've also discussed that Hashem is seeing, he knows everything, he sees everything in advance. And let's read the Mishnah again, okay? And this Mishnah, by the way, is coming from Rabbi Akiva, I believe. Is that not right? Yes, Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva says in Mishnah, chapter 3 of Pirkei Avot, Mishnah number 19, he says, everything is seen, yet the freedom of choice is given to us. The world, this will be an interesting thing, the world is judged with goodness, and everything depends on the majority of good deeds, okay? Or on the majority of what we do, actually, the majority of actions. All right. We already talked about the origin of free choice, and we had come to, if you have the book, it's on page 192, I believe this is where we were, where Rabbi Basser is laying out some particular things from the Maharal's commentary, and it's called the enigma of good, evil, and free choice. All right. I want to go through what he has to say about this, but then I want to come back and we'll tweak a few things and add a few things. Okay, that's my plan. That doesn't mean it will work according to plan, because I may jump and add them already. I may not be able to stand it, but stand the weight. But I'll try. The first thing the Maharal tells us is that free choice is uniquely human, as is free will. He's already showed us and proven to us that free will also. Free will and free choice, by the way, are not exactly the same things. You may have free will, but if you don't have choices, then you do not have free choice. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? To begin with, very quickly, we may have free will, but if our only choice is good, then we don't have free choice. It's the only thing we can choose. For us to have free choice, the opposite of good also has to exist. Otherwise, you don't have it. Okay. He says, the paradox of free choice is that God, and this is a paradox because he is the ultimate of goodness. He is only good. But he created a situation that allows for evil, so that there is free choice. God created the world, and look, on every one of these statements in the Maharal, we could absolutely talk about forever. God created the world to serve mankind, whom he endowed with free choice. Now stop right there for just a minute, because look at the profoundness of what he's saying. And I'm trying to get you to look at things critically and not just go over them. When you find something like that, try to connect it to everything else you know. For instance, we can look at that and say, he created the world to serve mankind. A lot of people will look at that and say, okay, so that means we can, if the world is created to serve us, we can do anything we want to with the world. Okay? We can pollute it. We can exploit it. We can do this. We can on and on and on. That absolutely is not true. Absolutely not. In fact, that actually jumps into the idea of there are choices also. Even though the entire universe is serving us, there are still choices of how we have it serve us. We can either choose good or we can choose evil, one of the two. Now, here's the deal. That's still not what the Maharal means when he says that, by the way. That's not even what he's talking about at all. This is what he is talking about. The Ramchal in Derek Hashem makes unbelievable statements along these lines, where he talks about how absolutely everything in the universe, from the highest, and in all the different worlds too, the spiritual worlds also, from the highest angel to the biggest star, to the smallest planet, to the speck of dust, to a virus, all of that, everything in the universe is actually created in order to bring a human being to a level of what he calls perfection, a level, but it's really completeness, to bring that person to a level of completeness, meaning where they are one with Hashem. That's what it means when the Maharal says he created the world to serve mankind. Everything is meant to serve us, and what is that service? It's meant to bring us closer to him. That's the idea. Not meant for us to exploit or take advantage of it or any of those kind of things. It's meant to bring us closer to him. So that's an unbelievable thing that you can catch on to there. Because you can read that verse in English and it doesn't, you can get that sense. I mean, if you don't know the rest of the story, you can read your own stuff into it and get this weird idea. This, by the way, also is why the rabbis say, Rabbi Nachman used to always say, every human being should say, okay, the whole world was created just for me. Because that's true. When the Ramchal says everything in the world is created for a human being to come close to God, it means for every human being. If only one human being existed, the entire thing would still exist in order to bring that one human being close to Hashem. That's the idea. So every human being can actually say the whole world was created just for me. Okay. So, but so he created the world to serve mankind, and mankind he endowed with free choice. Then the Maharal says, if God intervened to prevent evil, he actually would undermine two of the basic principles of the creation. Here we go. Number one, if he withdrew a person's free choice, that would undermine the divine nature of mankind, which actually lies in free choice. That's one of the reasons, what we stated at the very first. In order to have free choice, you have to have choices. Okay? Then the second part is, if he interfered with a person's ability to succeed in doing evil, he would undermine the system of nature which he created for the world to run by consistent and predictable rules. Okay? Now, Rabbi Basser has a note there where it says, God created the world to run according to the rules of nature, including part of the rules of nature also includes mankind's free will. If God ran the world directly without the rules of nature, then he would have to support the execution of free will by actively participating in man's evil, and that would contradict his goodness. Do you understand what he's saying? He's actually telling us that the side of evil, of course Hashem also created it. In fact, the Bible tells us directly that. But he does not support it directly. The only way the Sitra Achra, the other side in all the universes, is supported, in other words, receives any kind of food, any kind of sustenance, any kind of nourishment, any kind of energy, and the only way it charges its battery is actually through human beings, by the choices we make. When we make a choice for anything other than what's good, then it gets a meal. Okay? So Hashem, the Ramchal says Hashem still, he does support the side of evil, but he doesn't support it directly. The Maharal is saying he can't do that because that would contradict his goodness. He can't go against his goodness. Okay? All right. Then he says this thought, and by the way, the insight, the chidush of the Maharal here is that all of that is actually everything we're talking about. Because usually when we think of the laws of nature, we're thinking only of physical laws, okay? Okay? But it's also spiritual laws. So he's saying that this idea is also included in the very laws of nature. Okay. All right, let's go. He says, this thought is summarized in the following anecdote. He's going to quote, I wouldn't call it an anecdote, but it's a teaching from the sages. It's from the Mishnah. It's from Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah means strange worship, okay? It's the word for idolatry in Hebrew, Avodah Zarah. Service of strange. It's very interesting. Zarah means strange, something that's foreign, alien. Avodah is work, service, okay? And it's the word for idolatry, Avodah Zarah 54b. And it says, philosophers, meaning the pagan philosophers of Rome, asked the rabbis in Rome, if your God is displeased with idolatry, why does he not destroy it? That's a question everybody asks. Here's the answer. They answered, if they worshipped only things, if idolaters worshipped only things that were of no use, Hashem would destroy it. But in fact, they also worship the sun and the moon and the stars. And shall he destroy his world just because of these fools? The Maharal continues and he says, the answer that he will not destroy his world is sufficient as far as it goes. But like a true rabbi, they never stop there. He says, it begs the further question, okay, why doesn't he destroy the idol worshippers themselves? Why didn't he just destroy them? And the answer is that if he destroyed idol worshippers, then people, everybody that was left, would no longer have free choice. What choice would a person have if they were faced with annihilation if they worshipped an idol? So you see what he's saying? And this is exactly why in this world, in the world of Asiyah, that Hashem is so concealed. He's here just as strong as he is in the highest spiritual world, but he is totally concealed. It's for our benefit in the sense that it gives us free choice. The idea is if we could actually see him as he's here, or if we could sense him as his presence as he really is here, we would no longer have free choice. Your free choice would be taken from you. You wouldn't, I mean, when presented with two options, one good and one bad, and you really want to do the bad one, but you wouldn't do it because you know he's there. You know, this actually is a key to really getting a handle on yourself if you have some particular area in your life that you tend to screw up in. You know, is to constantly remind yourself that even though he's hidden from us and concealed, he's still very much here. Where if you could sense him, you would never even contemplate doing the thing you like to do that you shouldn't be doing. Okay, all right. Now here we go. Uvetuv haolam nadon. He says, the whole world is judged. When Hashem judges the world, he only judges the world with goodness. This takes a lot of explanation. Okay? Let's read what he has to say, and then I'll do my best to not jump before the time. Okay. Good is defined as that which is worthy. I like his definition. That which is worthy of creation and existence. You remember, every time Hashem created in the Genesis account, he looked and he saw and it was good. Okay? So good is defined as that which is worthy of creation and existence. God, in his goodness, allows evil because to do otherwise would, as we've already seen, would undermine his creations of nature and of human free choice. When we see that God, he says, does not thwart transgressors, we should not think that he approves of their evil. Rather, he gives an evildoer, he says, and this is Rabbi Basser's words, enough rope to hang himself. What actually the Maharal said was, he quoted from, or he quoted from the Talmud, Bava Kama 69a, where it says, feed a transgressor until he dies. It's the same idea. Okay, he gives a person enough rope to hang himself. This is actually not what I want to talk about. Okay, but like his definition, good is defined as that which is worthy of creation and existence. Now look what he says next. He says, God punishes and eventually terminates evil. But you know, there also is a sense, even though the rabbis, many of them, are talking about punishment, there's also a sense that very, very great, some of the great Hasidic rabbis used to say God doesn't punish at all, that God only forgives. And what we perceive as punishment from him is actually him bringing us to a place where we can be forgiven. It's a different kind of perspective. It's a different way of looking at it. But since this particular commentary likes the word punish, we'll use it. Even though when you read punish, I don't look at it that way. I really don't. My perspective of it is it's the same way. It's the same way when you spank your kids. You do it for their benefit. You do it to bring them to a place that's good for them. Okay, and for you too, also in your relationship with them. That's the idea. That's not really punishment. And I like what some of the rabbis say about that Hashem doesn't punish anybody. He just merely brings you to a place where he can forgive you. Because that's what he really does, is forgive. Okay. Now, it says here that God punishes and eventually terminates evil. I do not have the original from the Maharal in front of me, so I'm actually not sure if that's correct or not, because we know what's terminated of evil is that is irredeemable. Now, I have to explain that, because somebody's already saying, what do you mean there's redeemable parts of evil? Actually, yes, there are. In fact, much, much more than we would think. We also have to realize, and I'll just bring it to your thought right quick, back up here where he says, good is defined as that which is worthy of creation and existence. Well, don't we realize he also created the other side? That means somehow the other side, the side of evil in the universe, somehow some aspect of it can be included within good, and does actually is worthy of creation and existence. We're talking about some unbelievably profound spiritual ideas here that I don't want to hurt your brains, okay, and I don't want to hurt mine also in trying to explain it. Because I'm not always sure I understand it all. But I think I can give you a good illustration here in a moment. Let me finish with what he's talking about here. He says God punishes, he eventually terminates evil. Actually, he will bring everything. When Hashem destroys evil, it's actually everything that's on the evil side has been brought into his service, can be brought into it. Now he says, by the very definition of evil is the opposite of good, so evil does not have continuing existence. Well, that's true. It won't be considered by the time it's redeemed, by the time it's the clean aspects of it are brought out, evil actually won't have any more existence at that time. God in his goodness, he says, removes evil so that the world can continue to exist. We must not misinterpret, he says, God's accommodation of evil. We might imagine that God permits sin because he seeks evil for the world. Some people think that. Some people have an idea of God, you know, that he's not good. Put it that way. We might imagine that God, or if he loves people so dearly, then why doesn't he prevent evil? Why doesn't he stop it? Why doesn't he allow it to happen? We might think that he judges the world looking for an opportunity, just looking for a chance to condemn humanity. And that is actually many, many people's idea of God. That he is watching us, just waiting for you to screw up so he can zap you. Okay? This is not what Rabbi Akiva is saying. Rabbi Akiva is saying, you're judged, anytime the world is judged, he is doing it with goodness. Listen to what he says here. He says what the Maharal says. He said, this Mishnah tells us, don't make that mistake. Don't make such an error. The world is judged with goodness means that God judges the world out of his quality of goodness. God judges the world not to find opportunities for punishment, but to provide opportunities for goodness. You see, again, it's a difference in perspective. Totally difference in perspective. God judges the world. He is not looking to zap you. He is looking for some way to be good to you. And that's why he judges you. In doing so, he also helps the world survive the evil that he permitted to occur in the first place. He brings punishments, again, we have to understand it's really goodness, only to remove the evil and to deal with its perpetrators. He says human beings who do evil do so out of their own wickedness, but God brings constructive evil, in this case, or something constructive, let's put it that way. He brings something constructive out of the evil side from his own goodness. He says, in practice, we recognize that unhappy tidings are ultimately for our good by articulating the blessing, Baruch Hashem, the true judge is what we say. If you hear bad news, blessed are you Hashem, who is the true judge. If you hear good news, he says, anyway, we articulate the blessing, the true judge, with the same joy as we receive glad tidings with the blessing, who is good and does good. And we've talked about this many times. There's a whole conversation in the Talmud and the Gemara about what does it mean, that verse in Zechariah, when it says, and in that day, Hashem will be one and his name will be one. Okay? And the rabbis immediately ask the question, what does that mean? Does it mean today he's not one and his name's not one? And what that means is actually there is coming a day when we will realize his real unity and the unity in the entire universe, and that he is lovingly taken care of every aspect of our life, and it's all been only for good, no matter what, that we eventually will realize that if we get good news, like today we say, if we get good news, we say who is good and does good. If we get bad news, we say the true judge. But in that day, if we get news that we would normally think was bad, we'll say who is good and does good. We'll no longer say who is the true judge. Rabbi Akiva is showing us that even now, even if we say the true judge, he is still the true judge, but only with goodness. It's all wrapped up in goodness. Now, let's, okay, before we go to the next page, and I'm really not sure I can get this in here, but I'll try. The Baal Shem Tov used to say, how do we rectify evil? How do we correct? How do we make a tikkun for evil? And he means the other side. And he would say by being good, okay? Being tov, good. Tov is tet, vav, vet, okay? Tov, good. Its gematria is 17, all right? Then he pointed out that the two Hebrew words, clean and unclean, that those are not references to the side of holiness. Clean and unclean are references to the side of evil. The side of holiness is always clean. It can't become unclean. It's always good. It's holy. Any act that puts you in an unclean state is from the side of evil, but any time when you're rectified back to a clean state, it's still having to do with something that is attached, something that is coming from the side of evil, but it's clean, meaning that it's in the service of Hashem. And this is the same idea of the redemption. If we take those two words, okay, tahor in Hebrew, tet, he, vav, resh, tahor, that's clean. The gematria is 220. If we take the word for unclean, tameh, which is tet, mem, aleph, and the gematria is 50, that's unclean, okay, tameh. So we have tahor, 220, we have tameh, 50. We add those two things together, we come up with, by the way, all of these words that the Baal Shem Tov is talking about, they all begin with a tet, okay, with the letter tet, which is very interesting because there's a whole level of learning about this particular level. Anyway, let's take 220 plus 50, we come up with 270. If we take the simple gematria, or we take the simple letters that form 270, resh is 200, ayin is 70, 270. Resh, ayin, ra is evil. He proves to us that the two words, tahor and tameh, have to do, clean and unclean, has to do with things that come from the side of evil. Okay, for instance, let's take the one that we're all familiar with very much, to eat food. See, this, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, all of the things that the evil inclination gives to us are given to us in order that we might survive in a physical body in this world. Eating food, making money, okay, supporting your family, on and on and on, breathing air, reproducing, all of those things, they all come from the Yetzer Hara. And where's the Yetzer Hara attached to? It's attached to the other side. But if we take the advice of the Torah, the commandments, and we do all of those things according to the advice of Hashem, that puts that in a clean state. You understand what I'm saying? It puts it in the service of Hashem. So we can eat in the service of Hashem if we follow His advice. We can have a job and make money in the service of Hashem if we follow His advice. We can have relationships with other people in a clean state if we follow His advice. You understand what I'm saying? Or we can go against His advice and then we're tameh, then we're unclean. And totally adding and totally feeding the side of evil in the world. That's the idea of what all of this is. So what the Baal Shem Tov is telling us is that how do you rectify evil? How do you bring everything into tahor, cleanness, instead of tameh, uncleanness? Tov, be good. Very simple. Make every decision from goodness, not from your own self-interest, not from that will to receive for yourself alone, but from goodness. Be good. That's what he's saying. And he's absolutely 100% correct. Because, and just as the Maharal says, that good, tov, is defined as that which is worthy of creation and continued existence. And that is what will rectify the Sitra Achra, the other side, the side of evil in all the universes. It's from human beings being good. That is the idea. It's absolutely amazing. By the way, if we actually look at this, 270, the total gematria, tameh, unclean, is 50. Tahor is 220. Clean is 220. That means of the other side, 1/5 of it is really evil. 4/5 of it is not. Can be clean. But if not, if we choose not to be good, we move it into real evil. Okay? Do you understand the whole concept of what they're talking about? Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, because this also is the creation of Hashem in order to give us a world in which we have both free will and free choice. I'm getting a little wild. My kippah almost flew off my head. I must be stirred up or something. No, this is so important that we get this, and then we can move on. So far he's told us Hashem judges, the world is judged, everything is seen, but he gives us freedom of choice anyway, even when he knows we'll make the wrong one. And then if he has to judge us, he judges us only with his goodness. That's the only thing he judges with. Because he can't do anything else, by the way, because he's only good. Amen. So he judges completely with goodness. And every judgment he has to render on you is only to bring you to a place where you can be close to that goodness, where you can receive and have part of that goodness. Okay. Now we need to, the next time we're together, we need to look at where it says, and everything depends upon the majority of deeds, of things that we do. That's what it depends on. That's going to open up a whole another kind of a spatial shift in something that we have to look at. We'll look at what the Maharal has to say, and then we'll look at a few other little things. Okay? Beseda? Yofi Tofi? I'm finished. I'm finished, kaput, it's over. Okay. All right. Shalom uvrakah, peace and a blessing. Okay.
Thank you for joining us in our study. If you enjoyed this study and are interested in learning more from the Torah and the sages of Israel, then check us out on the internet at www.bfm101.com, or you may contact us toll-free at 1-800-639-0169. Our mailing address is Biblical Faith, P.O. Box 2, Abilene, Texas 79604. Until next time, we wish you shalom uvrakah, peace and a blessing.